Hello everyone, welcome back. This is S.C. Coleman, author. In this video, we are going to be talking about layering. The concept of layering can be thought about in many different ways, such as the layers on an onion, or the layers on cabbage, or the layers on a tree, or in a tree, bark, that sort of thing. But the layers that we're talking about here is mostly conceptual. It's the idea of hiding activity behind multiple layers. It's probably the best way to think about it. But not only just hiding activity, but also coordinating things in a way that it's difficult to disrupt, because there's no, as far as it's apparent, one single point of failure. But there usually is. It requires an analysis and understanding of the layers to find the core of it. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the particular aspect of layering relative to a company called Aramark. Now, the last video I did about this gives the groundwork, or the last two videos, I actually believe I did two videos on Aramark, and they lay the groundwork for this. And so this is the example of layering, specifically related to child trafficking and other types of egregious and creepy activity. This is from January 29th, 2019. Amendment number 4-1 of agreement with Aramark, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for food services. Juvenile Justice Center and Youth Treatment Center. Scott France, General Counsel. The Juvenile Court is seeking approval of an amendment with Aramark to provide food services for the Juvenile Detention Center and Youth Treatment Center. Prices will be increased by 15 cents for the time period of December 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. General Fund is 1010-11- or 1120-512110, and Youth Treatment Center operating budget, and there's another string of numbers there. Lucas County, Ohio, a Jody L. Ballot, that's Bravo Alpha Lima Oscar Golf Hotel, clerk. The signature is a clerk. Now, this is something I want to point out. Very often, the required signatures on these documents are clerks or some type of secretary, something like that. Mostly, if there is a requirement, of which there usually is, for a certain signature, the simple removal of that individual means paperwork can't be processed. And when most things are structured on the absolute sanctity of paperwork, that things can only be done unless you have the appropriate paperwork, then you can seriously disrupt things and make it grind to a halt. On the other hand, if there is a rule like that and you do take that person and ensure that that signature cannot be had, then they'll just change the rules. Another thing that will happen is that they'll just commit fraud and sign fictitiously for an individual. There's not much you can do about that, but I personally have run into the aggravating experience of refusal for an individual to sign where their signature is written into the rules as an absolute requirement, and thus I could not get my job done, period, no matter what, simply because I couldn't get a stupid signature on a piece of paper. And most of the stuff set up like that, but most of the stuff set up like that with as almost like an enemy position. It's done adversarially, and if that in turn is done back to them, then they'll just change things, they'll just fictitiously sign it, commit fraud, whatever, right? So that's not a guarantee that simply seizing the clerk is going to stop this stuff. It was an idea I had, though. County Board of Commissioners with offices at One Government Center, Suite 800, Toledo, Ohio. Lucas County Juvenile Court with offices at 1801 Spiel Bush Avenue, Toledo, Ohio. The operating agreement was authorized by Lucas County Board of Commissioners in resolution number 14-813, approved on September 16th, 2014. Here we've got a Denise Navarro Cuban, administrative judge, and a Julia R. One moment. I need to confirm what the last name is here, and there's a particular reason for that confirmation of the last name. So just bear with me 1 minute. Bates, Julia R. Bates, prosecuting attorney. And then you have Mark R. Adams, Vice President Finance for Aramark Correctional Services, LLC. Aramark Tower, 1101 Market Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Tax ID number 23-277-8485. And this is last updated on 11/2018. And here we have Lucas County Jail, a number of youth. What's interesting is that the price goes down with more people, and there's a dividing line between 60 to 69 number of youth, and the price is at $3,939. But if it's 70 to 79 youth, the price is $3,718. So that's kind of strange. Also, reimbursable snack is listed at 0.920, which would be cents. Strange. Prosecutor's Office, Amy Matuzowski. Contractor vendor agreement with Aramark. There's the Aramark address. Amount of original contract is blank, totals blank, and certified from fund numbers blank. Resolution date, if approved, is 1/29/2019. But then there's this weird number here, 19-79. You can see that, strange. Then we got date completed document returned to Department from Support Services is February 21st, 2019, but the auditor for certification if required is blank, and to support services section is blank, and to date to prosecutors blank, and it says please find 2 copies of contract documents, please approve to form. Now what's interesting is that they have 2 crossed out here and then a 2 written above it. Now why would you cross out 2 and then put a 2 above it? That's very odd. PeopleSoft requisition numbers left blank, but there's a stamp there which lists February 14th, 2019 as received. Inter-office communication. Now this is dated August 11th, 2015. Approval of agreement with Aramark Correctional Services to utilize the Juvenile Detention Center kitchen facilities. Juvenile Detention Center contact is SAID or SIDE or whatever, Sierra Alpha India Delta, ORA, Oscar Romeo Romeo Alpha, General Counsel. The agreement will permit Aramark Correctional Services to utilize the juvenile detention kitchen facilities to prepare breakfast and lunch meals for the Sunbridge schools. There you get your layering. Okay, so think about the elements involved. You have the juvenile detention kitchen facilities, quote unquote, which are the quote property of the juvenile court, which are being leased to a company called Aramark with the purpose of providing food to the schools. And there's your layering. The company comes in, adopts the process in an area controlled by someone else, and then that is then delivered as a product from the individual using the area to a different separate section and then utilized by them. So the food from the schools comes from essentially slave labor of juvenile detainees, as they're called, right? For the profit of a private company, and leasing property that most, still even probably many up to this point, still considered to quote be public property, etc. And then this is signed Jody L. Ballot, clerk. So this is unlikely that you would have a clerk signing these, the same name of clerk, signing these documents from the year 2015 to 2019, and I'm sure Going even deeper into it, you'll find that that's the same name on many other documents, so that's strange. But there's more stuff to come, more things that we'll notice here. Lucas County Juvenile Court and Aramark Correctional Services, LLC, first day of July 2015. The court and Aramark have entered into a separate agreement effective July 1st, 2015 for the management of food service operation of the Lucas County Juvenile Court. The court and Aramark desire to expand the working relationship as per the foregoing additional and separate arrangement for and in consideration of the mutual promises, covenants, and agreements hereinafter set forth. The parties of this agreement, with intent to be legally bound, agree as follows. The court agrees to permit Aramark to utilize courts, kitchen facilities located at the Juvenile Detention Center, hereinafter referred to as JDC, to prepare breakfast and lunch meals for the Sunbridge Schools, a K-5 grade charter school located at 2105 North McCord Road, Toledo, Ohio. More specifically, Aramark is authorized to utilize courts, JDC kitchen facilities to Aramark's total meal preparation output for Sunbridge Schools shall be approximately 500 meals per day, 5 days per week between the dates of August 22nd, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. Aramark shall maintain separate accounts and accounting indicating which foods are purchased and utilized in the meal preparation of the different sites for JDC, the Juvenile Youth Treatment Center, here referred to as YTC, and Sunbridge Schools. So if that doesn't make your skin crawl, then, well, that should make your skin crawl, and if it doesn't, it's probably for a different reason. August 22nd, 2015, and June 30th, 2016 is the term. All payments shall be made payable to the order of Lucas County and mailed to Amy Matuszewski, Business Office, Lucas County Juvenile Court, 1801 Spielbush Avenue, Toledo, Ohio. The court reserves the right to reject or restrict from involvement in service under this agreement any employee or other personnel of Aramark, as long as the reason for such restriction is non-discriminatory. Interesting. Aramark shall indemnify county for any and all such liabilities incurred under or as a result of this agreement. Article 11, Integration, Modification, and Amendment. This agreement shall not be modified in any manner except by instrument in writing executed by the parties to this agreement. However, it is agreed by the parties that any amendments to laws or regulations cited herein will result in the correlative modification of this agreement without the necessity for executing written amendments. So that's fraud, right? That's what they like to call a living document. They can take something that's already been done and then change it with no evidence that anything was changed. The impact of any applicable law, statute, or regulation not cited herein and enacted after the date of execution of this agreement will be incorporated into this agreement by written amendment signed by the parties and effective as of the date of enactment of the law, statute, or regulation. Any other written amendment to this agreement is prospective in nature. The instrument contains all of the agreements of the parties. No oral or other statements shall be binding on either of the parties hereto. That goes along with things I've talked about before, which is that our fictitious court system that we have today only recognizes paperwork, and that period alone, nothing else. There are no currently any recognized courts by most people anyway, where speech, right? Everything has to be reduced to writing. You go give a quote police report, and they have to fill it out and write it, and it is the piece of paper that matters, and not the voice of the person. So video recordings don't really work unless it's for public theater purposes in the so-called litigation nonsense. There's very few courts today that are called courts, of course, in which nothing or which things besides paperwork are recognized. One example could be a courts martial or some military type tribunal. Something like that. They might consider things beyond just simple paperwork alone, but most people are brainwashed into this idea, which we find represented here, which is the sanctity of paperwork. Paperwork is enough alone, no questions, no oral, no pictures, no nothing that doesn't pertain to reduced to writing, which is the term legal. Being reduced to writing is legal. Aramark agrees to protect, defend, indemnify, hold the county and court, its officers, employees, and agents free and harmless from and against any and all losses, penalties, damages, settlements, costs of liabilities, or every kind of character arising out of or in connection with any acts or emotions of Aramark negligent or otherwise in its employees, officers, agents, or independent contractors. Aramark agrees to pay all damages, costs, and expenses of the county in defending any action arising out of the aforementioned acts or omissions. Aramark assumes any and all liability for any and all operations, omissions, and neglect regarding its services provided to Sunbridge schools under this agreement with court and shall fully indemnify court and county. Oh, now why would they have that little clause in there? Go figure, right? Article 16, confidentiality. Surprise, surprise, that's the next article. The agreement establishes the relationship of qualified service so that the transfer of any client information necessary to the service function may be exchanged without additional side consent. Aramark further agrees to maintain the confidentiality of all children and families served. That is not to protect the families and children, that is to protect their operations and what they intend to do with those children, which of course are going to be laundered through their little child harvesting system. Disgusting people. No information on children or families served will be released without the express prior written consent of the court, or except as specifically required by law and or as required by medical emergency. Well, so of course naturally the court there is claiming, quote, ownership over children. The court, right? They love these, the ways they talk about this. A court used to be a practical place or thing, right? You have the courthouse, you have the courtyard, you know, you've got the town square. These are places in which people would gather and talk about things. But now it's just a ridiculous, relatively speaking, meaningless title for individuals who have delusions of grandeur and engage in some pretty heinous activities. Especially considering their disgusting things they do with children. Not the least of which is using children to as free labor for them to sell food to schools and do other things like that. Article 19, notice General Counsel Syed M. Ora, that's that name I said before, Trent Wright, District Manager, Aramark. This gives Aramark Correctional Services LLC. This gives a Ohio address at 11172 Billingham Avenue, Northwest Uniontown, Ohio 44685. Now it's interesting here. Oh wait, hold on 1 second. Service provider has an ongoing duty to inform the court immediately of any newly incurred criminal charges, investigations, and convictions regarding its employees who have direct contact with juvenile detention center youth or youth treatment center residents. That is, of course, to protect their operations because they will need to then cover it up, as the saying goes. Now, this is signed, So September 2nd, 2015, Julia R. Bates, prosecuting attorney, assistant prosecuting attorney, Denise Navar Kuban, administrative judge, Mark R. Adams, vice president of finance, and there's that tax ID number of 23-2778485. And the commission, Lucas County Board of Commissioners, 3 people, signed August 11th, 2015. So what's the likelihood that all of those people are in the same positions in 2019? That's extremely unlikely. Certificate of insurance acceptable to the owner shall be filed with the owner prior to commencement of the work naming owner as additional insured. So who is the owner they're referencing in this section? These certificates shall contain a provision that coverages afforded under the policies will not be canceled unless at least 30 days prior written notice has been given to the owner. And you see they have an owner in all caps, as well as written notice in all caps, and work in all caps, or all capitalized. Comprehensive general liability of property damage, contractor's protective liability, contractual liability, completed operations products, automobile bodily injury, and property damage owned and non-owned and hired vehicles, and owner's protective liability. The latter policy shall be named as insured by the or insured the owner. If excluded from contractor standard coverages, the following shall be deleted or policies provided under the contract document exclusions. 1. Underground operations. 2. Third-party beneficiary. And 3. Collapse, where exposure is determined Bodily injury, liability, and property damage insurance shall cover the use of explosives if used in performance of the contract. Insurance should be placed with carrier an AM Best rating of at least an A-. Why would that be required for, obviously somebody's going to say, oh, well, that's just standard format. Ugh. Commercial general liability insurance, general aggregate limit is 2 million. Products completed operations aggregate limit 2 million. Personal advertising injury limit is 1 million. Each occurrence limit 1 million. Comprehensive automobile liability, bodily damage, and property damage liability limit, each occurrence 1 million. Contractor shall acquire and maintain, if applicable, fire and extended coverage insurance upon the project of the full insurable value thereof for the benefit of the owner, contractor, and subcontractors as their interests may appear. Contractor shall procure and maintain at its own expense during the contract time in accordance with the provisions of the laws of the state in which the work is performed workmen's compensation insurance, including occupational disease provisions for all his employees on the site of the project, and in case any work is sublet, the contractor shall require such subcontractors similarly to provide workmen's compensation insurance, including occupational disease provisions for all the latter's employees, unless such employees are covered by protection afforded by the contractor in case any class of employees engaged in hazardous work under the contract at the site of the project is not protected under workmen's compensation statute. Contractor shall provide and shall cause such subcontractor to provide adequate and suitable insurance for the protection of his employees not otherwise protected. Professional liability. Relative to any and all claims, losses, damages, liability, costs, the contractor agrees to indemnify and save the County of Lucas, its officials, and employees hereinafter county harmless from and against any and all suits, actions, or claims of property losses, damages, or personal injury claimed to arise from negligent act, error, or omission by the contractor or its employees. It is expressly understood and agreed that these indemnification obligations are enforceable to the extent permitted by blah blah blah, and no claims against the county by any employment of the county and any subcontractors, the contractor agent, or anyone directly or indirectly employed by any of them or anyone for whose acts any of them may be liable. Contractor hereby expressly waives the immunity provided to contractor by Article 2, Section 35 of the Ohio Constitution and Ohio Revised Code, blah blah blah, all regarding workers' compensation immunity, so that this indemnification obligation may be enforced by the County of Lucas against contractor in those instances. Hey, you love that nonsense? Yeah, you're waiving your right. Boy, where did they come up with that garbage? I wonder. There's a waiver for everything, was a saying that we had in the military. Of course, that's not true, but you know, you can't waive away consequences of trying to murder someone, right? That person will probably take that personally. People don't generally like to be murdered. If somebody tries to murder you, you try to murder them right back, right? That's sort of the idea. There's in today it seems like a lot of people can get away with just blatant theft and some other nasty activities simply by stating that they're immune from it, or they're waived, or they're indemnified, or some nonsense like that. I mean, that's sort of like what you're looking at here. But regardless of whatever the garbage they put in this paperwork, you know, people find out what these people are doing, and they find out who they are individually, where they live, everything like that. Doesn't matter what garbage they write in paperwork. They're going to be held to consequences, just in reality, right? Court of Common Pleas, Lucas County, Ohio, Juvenile Division, authorization for release of information. Please return information to Diana Miller, Human Resources Director, Lucas County Juvenile Court, 1801 Spielbush Avenue, Toledo, Ohio. Here, under the Lucas County Juvenile Court Prison Rape Elimination Act PREA Compliance Declaration, we have down here at the bottom a list of the background information, and I've looked into some of these, but not all of them. I didn't know some of these existed. There's the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, BCI background check, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI background check, Ohio Central Registry on Child Abuse and Neglect background check, Northwest Ohio Regional Information System, NORIS background check, Law Enforcement Automated Data System, LEADS background check, and Lucas County Sheriff background check. All of that, of course, is unconstitutional, it's criminal, treasonous, unlawful, illegitimate, etc. And as always, those things are not designed for the stated purposes, but as usual have different motives behind them, mainly speaking the control of the population in the hands of Private individuals that hide behind the scenes that you can't ever find or don't know about, they can just input your data into the system for any reason whatsoever, and thus they can blackball you, they can mark you, whatever, and there's virtually nothing you can do about it. That's definitely not the purpose of the Constitution. The purpose of the Constitution is by and for the people, not that we all have these background checks that are administered by other people, credit history, etc., and they use that to control our lives. It's a treason in many cases because it's designed for adversarial purposes, but at the same time, there's other problems with it. Prosecutor's Office, Amy Matuszewski, Aramark Correctional Services. Certified from fund number is listed as NA. Now this has the amount of original contract at $18,000 and total at $18,000. Resolution date, if approved, was 8/11/2015. And then here, again, we have a strange number, 15-635. There's no note on what that number actually indicates. NA is listed in date to support services. Here we've got the date completed document returned from Department of Support Services is 9/11/2015. So why is to support services listed with no date? Well, actually not just listed with no date, but actually filled in NA. And then receipt from support services is listed here. PeopleSoft requisition number has nothing. It doesn't even have that stamp that we saw earlier. Now this is for September 10th, 2019. D. Williams Ridley, City Manager, submitted by Henry Oyakanmi, Director of Finance. Purchase order agreements, Aramark Uniform Rental and Laundry Service. Authorizing the City Manager to piggyback off the City of Fresno's competitively bid contract with Aramark Uniform Services for the provision to provide rental and laundering of uniforms, walk-off mats, towels, and miscellaneous items for various departments. And this is the City of Berkeley, Office of the City Manager in California. Total not to exceed amount of $468,047. That thousand, actually, it's like, never mind. Either way, it's a 28-month period, total of 3 years, through January 4th, 2022. The city currently spends approximately $186,530 annually with Aramark Uniform Services to provide rental, lease, and laundering services, uniforms, walk-off mats, towels, and miscellaneous items for various departments. City of Berkeley was piggybacking off the City of Hayward's contract for uniform rental, lease, and laundering services. City of Fresno contracted with Aramark is bid number 9407 with start date of January 5th, 2019 through January 4th, 2022. Aramark's laundering service, according to their proposal to Hayward, uses less water, less energy, and fewer chemicals than standard home laundering. In addition, Aramark manages the discharge of water in accordance with Environmental Protection Agency standards. Aramark manages the discharge of water. And we also noticed in the previous video that Aramark Tower is the office address for the Water Department for Philadelphia. So there's obviously some things going on here relative to quote unquote water. That's also a cover for other heinous activity. Aramark's sustainability objective over the next 12 years or by 2030 is to reduce water loss and waste in its operations by 50%. Possibly by killing enough people so that way that becomes possible. The Environmental Preferable Purchasing Policy, Resolution number 62,693-NS 2004, establishing an environmental purchasing policy charging the city with protecting the public health and welfare of its residents and workers as well as the health of the environment. Don't you love how they always just afford to themselves these grandiose obligations that then you'll find in other paperwork that they enjoy, obligations they enjoy, or responsibilities they enjoy. That's not quite how that word's supposed to work. But here, that's what they referenced is where they declared unilaterally that they have private ownership over essentially all land and people. Quite ridiculous. This is contact person is Dennis Dang, Acting General Services Manager, 510-981-7329. And that's the only information listed there. Purchase order agreements, Aramark Uniform Rental and Laundry Service, providing protective clothing and equipment to authorized city employees, is agreed to in the MOU between the city and local 1021 maintenance with the provision to supply protective clothing to employees at no cost. Wonder how much of that is body armor. Denton County, Texas, and Aramark Correctional Services, LLC, September 13th, 2011, food services contract, Denton County Jail and Denton County Juvenile Facility. Juvenile being the operative word there. Mary Horn County Judge, Denton County Commissioners Court, 110 West Hickory, Denton, Texas. This is unsigned, by the way. David Kimmel, Vice President of Finance, Aramark Tower, same address as usual. Now, what's interesting is that with the rates for juvenile meals, they add a third digit. And I can't say why, but just that they do add a third digit rather than, or a third digit from the decimal point. So 4 digits in total. So instead of like $1.35, you have $1.356. So 1.356, right? It's really weird. How do you have a percentage of a penny? Agreement shall commence on October 1st, 2010, continue through September 30th, 2011, renewed effective October 1st, 2012 through September 30th, 2013. And that's for Denton County, Texas. This next one, back to Lucas County, Ohio. July 30th, 2019, approval of food service operating agreement with Aramark for the Juvenile Detention Center Youth Treatment Center. So here's a question for you. Why do we have virtually the same document? One dated January 29th, 2019, and the other dated July 30th, 2019. There are some slightly different pieces of information on this one, though. Contact is Marcy Garlick, General Counsel. Bid opening was held April 24th, 2019, period through July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Here's just listed, following bid was received, Aramark. Juvenile Court has reviewed the bid and recommends acceptance of the bid from Aramark for the food service agreement as they were the only bid. Oh yeah, what a surprise. General Fund, Youth Treatment Center. Again, signed Jody L. Below. Here we've got intra-office communication. Stamp received August 15th, 2019. Again, no PeopleSoft requisition number listed. Aramark estimated is listed up here for the original amount of contract. I don't know why they would write estimated above it. It's $302,423. Certified from fund number is 1010-1120-512-110. Attached, please find 2 copies. Here we've got resolution date already approved is 7/30/2019, and again, a random weird number without explanation next to it, 19-681. Date completed document returned to Department of Human Support Services is 8/20/2019. First day of July 2019, Lucas County Board of Commissioners, One Government Center, Suite 800, Toledo, Ohio, and Lucas County Juvenile Court, 1801 Spielbush Avenue, and Aramark Correctional Services, LLC, a Delaware company, 2400 Market Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Invitation to bid, ITB number 19-004P. Service provider submitted a proposal dated April 24th, 2019. Agreement shall commence on July 1st, 2019 and end on June 30th, 2020, renewed for up to 4 additional one-year periods. Authority of county is listed here. Retained signature authority of the state agency / county agreement, free and reduced price policy statement, and claims for reimbursement. Ensure that all federally donated foods received by the county made available to service provider accrue only to the benefit of the county's juvenile detention center food service and are fully utilized therein. And there we have another layer. Federally donated foods. I wonder where they're getting those foods that are, quote, federally donated. So essentially you have all these different layers laundering free food, right, that they probably take under false pretense from somewhere else, probably, quote, donated to the feds by churches, etc., all that nonsense. And then they use the free labor of institutionalized children so that they can run their criminal enterprise and engage in other types of conquest and things like that. Retain control of the food service account and overall financial responsibility for the program. Be responsible for determining and verifying applications for free and reduced price meals for free milk benefits and the conduct of any hearings related to such determinations. So now they're holding hearings. The responsibility cannot be delegated to service provider. Be responsible for citing reimbursement claims. The responsibility cannot be delegated to service provider. Establish all prices, including price adjustment for food items served under the nonprofit school service account. What is that? What's a nonprofit school service account? Interesting. Reimbursable meals, a la carte service, adult meals, and vending machines. Conduct an on-site review of the lunch, counting, and claiming system employed by each school within the jurisdiction of county. Service provider shall maintain such records as county will need to support its claims for reimbursement under the National School Lunch and Breakfast Programs. All records of service provider pertaining to county's FSP shall be made available to representatives of county, the state agency, USDA, the U.S. Comptroller General, or the U.S. General Accounting Office upon request at service providers' offices during regular business hours. So no one else, basically. All such records shall be kept on file for 4 years after the end of the contract year to which they pertain, or such other period within the Secretary of Agriculture. Appropriate state officials may from time to time determine. Appropriate state officials. Jeez, stuff's so ridiculous. Service provider shall have state or local health certification for any facility outside the county in which prepare meals for use in county and shall maintain such health certification for the duration of the agreement. Service providers shall credit the county for the value of all donated foods received for use in the FSP and the contract year, including both entitlement and bonus foods, and include the value of donated foods contained in processed end products. That's interesting. So does that mean that Aramark is going to pay them for, quote, donated foods? Now they're redefining what the word donation means. Service provider shall credit the county for the value of all donated foods received for use in the county's meal service on each monthly invoice. The county distributing agency, sub-distributing agency, the Comptroller General, the Department of Agriculture, or their duly authorized representatives may perform on-site reviews of service provider food service operations, including the review of records, to ensure compliance with requirements for the management and use of donated foods. Extensions or renewals of the agreement, if applicable, are contingent upon fulfillment of contract provisions relating to donated foods. Service providers shall cooperate with county in promoting the nutritional education aspects of county's FSP and other efforts of county to coordinate those aspects with classroom instruction. So that's a brainwashing in line. Service providers shall serve free and reduced price meals to those juveniles designated by county and shall protect the anonymity of such juveniles. Yeah, sounds like because they don't want those trafficked children to be found. That's the reason for their protection of anonymity nonsense. They always love to hide behind that. That's for national security. It's for public safety. It's for the environment. Right? I think we've heard that about a billion times at this point. Additional services, food, beverage, and other services required or desired by the facilities outside the scope of this agreement, including fresh favorites, services for special events and functions, shall be provided by service provider upon written authorization by the county and or administration at mutually agreed upon prices for such services. Payments only shall be sent to Aramark Dallas Lockbox, P.O. Box 978839, Dallas, Texas 75397-8839. And here we've got more nonsense that is not really necessary at this point to read through. Here we've got notice, General Counsel at 1801 Spielbush Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, and Mark Adams, Vice President of Finance, again is listed. Confidential information section, just the usual. And once again, we have, equipment and supplies. The court will maintain ownership of any and all equipment and supplies furnished to the service provider under this agreement. The court agrees to provide adequate workspace in the Juvenile Justice Center for the service provider's personnel to perform services under this agreement. Service providers personnel hereby agree to comply with any and all county or court policies, procedures, or other requirements concerning the use of county and court equipment and supplies. So it's the quote county and court equipment and supplies. All caps, corporation and with employees, and a private entity with in general foreign beneficiaries. Date approved by Commissioner 7/30/2019. Again, Denise Navarre Kuban, Administrative Judge. Tax ID number is 23-277-8485. Mark Adams, VP Finan. That's got to be a typo. Finane. Instead of finance, it's Finane. CFO. Julia R. Bates, Prosecuting Attorney and Assisting Prosecuting Attorney, but there's no date given here. It's interesting. Down here we have juvenile snacks at 0.900. Strange. And then here's another form. It's not signed at all. Here it lists something called food away from home. I don't know what that is. That's probably not what they pretend it is either, because I bet if you looked up food away from home, would be some nonsense about like sporting events or something like that, or like children going to away games for soccer or hockey or football or some nonsense like that. But there's probably, as usual, a true motive behind it, and the rest is all just what the mask, the cover story, the thing that you're supposed to see, and not what in actuality it is. Disclosure of lobbying activities. Type of federal action lists cooperative agreement. Status of federal action, and we have report type. Name and address of reporting entity. There's a prime and a sub-awardee. This is a standard blank form, it appears, which let's see what the form number is. Standard form -LLL, 3 L's. Here at the bottom we've got the numbers 551145.6. Form of payment lists a cash nature. Never heard it used in that term before, cash nature. And then blank. Federal use only, reproduction, authorized for local. Local what? Authorized for local, that's all it says. That's odd. Instructions for completion of disclosure of lobbying activities form. And we'll just go ahead and end it there. Either way, I think we get the correct picture here of how this Aramark system is structured, about the layering, right? They take foods under or supplies under false pretense, and then they use free labor, fraudulently acquired, of course, to then control the food aspect of the child-based industry. And you have multiple layers involved in this, or alleged to be involved, at least in this. But the singular factor in all of these cases is Aramark. And as we've seen, this is probably going to be the same thing just about everywhere, because that institution appears to be the core, administratively anyway, for the entire bogus and illegitimate city, county, and state corporation of, acting in the name of, state of, city of, county of, etc. So the most important aspect here, though, of course, is child harvesting and child trafficking, and that particular motive behind all of this, the idea of acquiring children with the objective, the purpose of extracting things like adrenochrome, epinephrine, other type of biological products and components, and obviously, you have all the child prostitution types of deals. And of course, here they're basically openly stating that they're using child labor, free child labor, through their detainees.